For months, we've been wondering, when is the next rotation in the Pokemon trading card game going to happen? It usually happens in the August, September timeframe, around the time of the World Championships. And the Pokemon Company announced that they were delaying rotation. And now it's the middle of December, and they finally announced rotation. It's going to be happening April 14th, 2023 for IRL events. And on Pokemon Trading Card Game Live, it's going to be on March 30th, 2023. We've got a couple of months to go, and one of the sad side effects of this is that they don't explicitly say PTCGO, which means this is probably the target death date for our good old PTCGO. That makes me really sad. That's a video for another day, but we now have official confirmation on when rotation is happening, and I think it's time that we talk about the cards that we are losing to rotation. I'm Jet from inthirdperson.com. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and I've put together this list of notable cards that are going away in rotation. It's 85 cards. You might want to go grab some popcorn or something, settle in, and we'll go through the cards and just talk about the ramifications of them going away. As a heads up, I've put this together in PTCGO, so I'm just going to go in the order that they appear here on the screen. I'm not trying to say that Oranguru is the biggest loss. This is just the order, and I'm going to move from left to right so it's easy to track. And let's start with Oranguru. With the Primate Wisdom ability, being able to switch the top card of your deck with one in your hand, it has been a great card in the Sword and Shield era. That is unfortunately going away. The closest alternative to an ability like this is Switching Cups, but that is an item card, and we're not going to have a Pokemon, at least at the time of this recording, that has the same ability. I didn't think we'd have to go all the way here to talk about the cards that are the biggest losses in terms of Pokemon. Shady Dealings Drizzile and Shady Dealings Inteleon. Let's talk about these ones together. They are one of the best draw engines in the game. Being able to cherry pick trainer cards has defined so many meta decks in the game, and unfortunately they're going away, and it doesn't look like at this point in time there's a substitution to this type of play. I would like to see some variation of Shady Dealings come back, but at the time of this recording, we don't have anything like that yet. And I think the biggest question mark for a number of players who watch my channel and probably got in because of the League Battle decks and the Ice Rider deck, we're gonna have to wait and see what Ice Rider looks like without Shady Dealings, and what Palkia looks like without Shady Dealings. There's a lot of water decks that are up in the air, and just a lot of decks, period, that without Shady Dealings, they don't really function, and we're gonna have to wait and see if there are viable alternatives. But if there are, we're definitely going to cover those on the channel. Amazing Rare Rayquaza is a Pokemon that only recently found its footing as part of the Lost Zone box decks, and it's going away in rotation. Unfortunate, because this card is really cool and it's only finding its way now, and you've got a couple more months to enjoy this one. One of the biggest losses in rotation is Gormandi's Snorlax, where you draw up until you have 7 cards and end your turn. This is a great draw engine for slower decks, single prize decks, control decks. Urshifu runs this sometimes, and there isn't anything quite like this card that we've seen so far, so this is going to be a loss for sure. Chinchino, Make Do. This is a great draw engine where you discard a card, draw 2 cards, and while this will be missed, we do have alternatives to this card. There is a Liepard that has the trade ability, and most recently Kirlia and Gardevoir have Refinement, which does basically the same thing, and a number of players are already starting to move on to those ones. So if you're looking for a Chinchino like engine, switch over to Liepard or Gardevoir, and I think that we can let Cinccino ride off into the sunset. Togekiss VMAX was never a big player in the space, but it is a whole deck archetype that is going away, and it did get a little better once Double Turbo Energy came out, but this one never really found its footing, and I think that it's not going to be missed too much, but it did get a little bit of play here and there, which is why we're flagging it here. Absolutely one of the biggest losses in rotation is going to be Crobat V. We're really going to miss its dark asset ability where you can, when you put it on the board, you can draw up to 6 cards. Almost every, I wouldn't say almost every deck, but so many decks in the game over the years have relied on Crobat V as a draw engine, and now that's going away. And at this point in time, we haven't seen any similar alternatives to that, and if there isn't, it's really going to slow the game down, which is kind of what I think the Pokemon Company is trying to go for, but we'll have to see on that. You'll be missed, Crobat. Galarian Zigzagoon, a personal favorite card of mine. When you put it on the board, you can drop a damage counter on any of your opposing Pokemon. This was really great at fixing math and doing that incremental damage to get that big KO, or mark something to get hit for big damage later, like a Jolteon deck or a Samurott deck. And unfortunately, we're going to be losing Galarian Zigzagoon in rotation at this point in time. No real substitute for that, but we'll have to see if the Pokemon Company comes back with a card with a similar ability. One of the latest late bloomers in the Sword and Shield era, Amazing Eviltal, is going away. To some people, that's going to be amazing news. For others, particularly Lugia players, not so much. It has that crazy move, Amazing Destruction, that's an instant KO, but its crazy attack cost has made it unusable until recently. Now with the Archeops engine, you can power this up no problem, but in the end of March, this card's going away. So Eviltal's reign on the top was short like leprechauns, as the great notorious B.I.G. once said. Some people are going to love that Galarian Weezing is rotating out. Its neutralizing gas ability, shutting off all of your opponent's abilities except for neutralizing gas, is definitely a card that has seen some play here and there. I don't think it ever got all the way to the top, but it's certainly a playable card and has always found its way to obstruct many of the meta decks that rely on abilities. And this one doesn't currently have any sort of substitution. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw some variation of this come back at some point, but for the time being, Galarian Weezing, you probably won't be missed. At least I won't miss you as long as I'm not playing. Unless I'm playing it, then I'm really sad. Eternatus VMAX is in a weird spot. So this is a deck that when it first came out was the deck to play. Then it has kind of disappeared, and I've been following the Japanese results on Pokeka, that Japanese Twitter account with all of the tournament results, and of late Eternatus has been popping up a lot paired up with Galarian Weezing. You use Weezing to disrupt the most meta decks like Mew and Lugia, and then you come in and one-hit KO with the Eternatus. It hasn't really come back in the Western world, but Eternatus VMAX for a time was the big bad deck of the game, and is kind of seeing a resurgence right now. So it is kind of nice to see it ride off with some sort of prominence, at least in Japan. I'm going to miss this one because this is one of the first decks that I built that wasn't complete crap, and you'll be missed, homie. Malamar VMAX took a little bit of help from Arceus to get rolling, but once Arceus came into the game with Brilliant Stars, Malamar VMAX found a home with Arceus, being able to cover that max jammer cost of 2 dark and 1 colorless, hitting for 180 damage, hitting Mew for weakness, and not having fighting for weakness made Malamar the ideal dark partner for Arceus, and unfortunately Malamar will be rotating as well. These amazing rare cards are unfortunately coming in a little late here. Reshiram, with the cost of a fire, lightning, and a dark energy, hitting for 270 damage while also doing 62 itself, has seen a little bit of play in recent times in Lost Zone box decks, but we're going to have to say goodbye. A beginner level and theme deck player classic, Charizard with Royal Blaze, is sadly rotating out, and this is going to be the last of the old school theme deck cards that will be going away. And so we're gonna make it play some sad music here for the entirety of the classic theme deck format going away as part of this rotation. Scorch VMAX has gotten a bit of play here and there, definitely when it first came out, but since then it's kind of fallen off a cliff. Not even Arceus and Magma Basin or Lost Zone have really helped Scorch at all, and so not going to be missed too much, but this was a deck archetype that was played for a little while that we should note is going away. Charizard VMAX is a card that I'm going to miss a lot. Yes, this didn't really get too much play. It did get more play once Arceus came into the scene, and Arceus Charizard VMAX did get some play in tournaments and had some decent showings. But with the Arceus behind it, Charizard was able to cover this energy cost. And unfortunately, we're gonna see it go. I love playing this card in Arceus. I love playing this card in Lost Zone decks. I love playing this card with Lugia, where you can put the heat energy on and have 410 HP and hit for 300 damage. It's absolutely nuts. And I feel like I'm the only person in the world that's going to miss this card, but I'm gonna miss this card. Eldegoss V is a card that didn't really get much play, but it did. It's a really nice ability where when you put it on the board, you could grab a supporter card from your discard and then put it in your hand. You don't have to shuffle your deck because you're getting it from the discard. But it didn't really get a lot of play, but it is a notable loss, and there were certain decks, like control decks in particular, that would play this to fish out supporter cards, but this one's going away as well. One of the most annoying cards in my early days of playing the game, Decidueye, is leaving the format. Its Deep Forest camo made it so that it could not be hit by Pokemon V or Pokemon GX, and there were times where this card could win games and even win tournaments just because all of the meta decks could not hit it. Now, it is a Stage 2 Pokemon. It doesn't do a lot of damage, and this has largely been replaced by Miltank, so no one's really gonna miss Decidueye, but for a time, this was a super obnoxious card. Orbeetle VMAX is one that I'm going to miss. This is one of the first VMAXs I pulled a bunch of and could start to build a deck. Its Eerie Beam to put damage counter on everything is kind of cool. Its Gmax Wave was an interesting attack, but it never really got off the ground. I know people have been trying to play this card as recently as a couple of months ago, where it's placed well or won in a couple of online tournaments. Never really found its footing, but it was a really fun card to play, and it's going to be missed. Amazing Rare Raikou. This one, it's definitely seeing more play now in light of Lost Zone box decks and Lugia decks, but I actually don't like this card very much. I find that people play Manaphy and then it shuts down the snipe shot or what have you. You need to get a choice belt to knock out Lugia in one hit. So I won't miss this one too much, but there are a couple of meta decks out there, like counter Lost Box decks and Lugia, that run the Raikou, and they're going to be hurt. And you should also be paying attention. We've mentioned a lot of cards that are going away that help Lugia, and I think Lugia is going to be on the watch list going forward with this rotation. Good riddance, the Vikavolt card is going away, one of the most obnoxious attackers in the game with its paralyzing bolt that item locks the opponent. Cannot stand fighting this. If you notice, I have 0 of these cards, and part of it was I didn't want to trade for this card going into knowing that it was going to rotate soon, but I hate this playstyle, and I just didn't want to play it. I will be very happy to see this one go away. We're also saying goodbye to Jolteon with the Thunderous Awakening ability, where if this card has Memory Capsule on it, water Pokemon have no abilities. This was great for shutting down Shady Dealings at the peak of Palkia Mania, but Shady Dealings is also rotating out. We'll get to that in a second. So Jolteon probably not missed until we see what new water abilities come into the game. We should also just give a quick sec to Aegis/V, which is going away. And the notable part about this is Sonic Edge, where it does 130 shred. And this is something that some decks use specifically to counter Miltank, though really not much else besides that. It also has a VMAX that is also going away. I don't think too many players are going to miss that, but it is something worth noting. Potentially a big change, Duraludon V from Champion's Path is rotating out, and this is the one that takes 30 less damage from attack, so essentially 250 HP. Most competitive Arceus Duraludon decks run this version of Duraludon. However, with this rotating away, maybe players switch to the single strike Duraludon V. That's the one I use all the time because this Duraludon was always too expensive for my liking, so I just use the other one. I don't necessarily think it's the end of the world for Arceus Duraludon, but it is a notable change that does make the deck weaker. The first of our legendary doggos that we got to talk about, Zacian V, going away. And this one's kind of sad. At the peak of Zacian mania with ADP, the pandemic happened, and Zacian V at its peak just like didn't get any real play in live tournaments because of the pandemic. So it never really got a chance to shine on the big stage when it was at the top of the mountain. But its Intrepid Sword will be missed, its Brave Blade, and at this point, the way that the meta has gone, this is actually a little too slow. And at the time when this first came out, this card was crazy fast, and now it's been outpaced by so many different cards that it really only shows up as a support or secondary attacker at this point. Zamazenta, Zacian's buddy, is also going away, and this one will not be missed as much. It's kind of been disappearing for a while now. Its Dauntless Shield ability stops attacks from VMAXs, but with the introduction of V-Stars, VMAXs have really gone away, thus making Zamazenta kind of useless. So, no one's really going to miss Zamazenta. It was super annoying for a time when it first came out, though, when there wasn't really answers to turn off Dauntless Shield, such as Canceling Cologne or Path to the Peak. Some Ditto decks are going to miss Shedinja, which had this really cool combo. You throw Shedinja in the discard pile, you put the energy on Ditto, you set up the Garbodor that puts the poison damage on if there's a stadium, and you could one-hit KO anything in the game. Never really caught on, but super annoying deck to play against that is going away because Shedinja is rotating. The entirety of Mad Party is going away, and it's sad to see a deck archetype go. However, this archetype just never really got where it needed to go. It was supposed to be that single prize attacker that was able to uptrade with the bigger decks. And even as more ways of discarding Pokemon to build up its damage were introduced, it never really got all the way to the point where it's viable. Like, it never got to the point of a Regigigas or a Malamar or Lost Box, where these were decks that could really compete with the multi-prize decks. And I don't think too many people are going to miss Mad Party going, though this was definitely a deck that people have tried to make work to the very end. A deck archetype that I'm going to miss, that's Dragapult VMAX. This was at its peak in 2021 around the Evolving Skies era, where it was hitting for 130 damage plus the bench sniping. It was a really obnoxious deck, but a ton of fun to play. One of my personal favorites. Sad to see Frostmoth go. This was a very cool card that lets you accelerate water energy from your hand to your Pokemon on the bench. There are some like water box decks that have made great use of Frostmoth that are going away, unfortunately, because yeah, Frostmoth is just not going to be here anymore. Last on our Pokemon list, Inteleon VMAX. This one I'm flagging largely because there is still a Inteleon League battle deck that you might see in the store. Pretty much all of that is rotating out, so there's no point in picking that one up. If you're watching this later, there is a video I have made about which League battle decks to consider in light of rotation coming up. If not, if you're watching this as soon as it comes out, that video will be coming out in the coming days. A number of key trainer cards are going away, including Capacious Bucket. Water had a big advantage being able to grab 2 water at a time, and on top of that they had Frostmoth as well. This is going to hurt water decks pretty bad. Evolution Incense is a massive loss for the entire game, being able to just search for a evolution Pokemon with one card without having to discard anything. Love this card. Unfortunately, it's going away, and it doesn't look like we're going to get an equivalent. There is that candle card where you flip a coin, and if it's heads, you get the evolution Pokemon. I don't like that at all. We still have Ultra Ball, which has actually been updated, so we're going to have Ultra Ball even longer, but you have to discard 2 cards in the process. So I think that the Pokemon Company is trying to get away from Evo Incense, probably thinking it's too good. I love this card. I think it sucks to see this card go. Hyper Potion saw some play with Arceus decks being able to heal up. This one will be missed by a handful of decks. Most decks weren't really in a position to use it, but for the decks that could, this is going to hurt. A massive loss for metal decks. Metal Saucer is going away, most likely going to hurt stuff like Dialga going forward. And Dialga was already shaky to begin with, but this makes it even worse. And I really hope there's more support than the stage 2 Pokemon they've shown so far. Like, we've had it's the Kling Klang that accelerates energy, the Magnezone that accelerates energy. They're okay, but not they haven't worked too great. But I know that, you know, both of those are stage 2 Pokemon, and the game is going to be shifting more towards stage 2 Pokemon as the EX cards are revealed, and maybe those will become more viable in that new meta. But in the immediate term, just looking at it based on the information we have now, Metal Saucer is really going to be missed. At the time of this recording, we are losing Ordinary Rod, and I am going to miss this, but I also wouldn't be surprised if some version of Rod came back, especially for single prize decks, where being able to get your Pokemon back and get some energy back is really helpful for those archetypes to succeed. And at this point in time, there isn't a reprint for Ordinary Rod, but the situation is fluid. Pokemon's been revealing new cards almost every day. So if it has been revealed since the recording of this video, I apologize. Palpad, potentially a big loss here. A number of decks that are, in particular, have a lot of supporter cards and they're spread pretty thin on that front are going to miss being able to put 2 supporter cards from the discard pile back into the deck. Shady Dealings decks were also loving Palpad to be able to reuse certain cards, but this is going away. I wouldn't be surprised if we got some variation of Palpad back, but for the time being, it looks like this is going away. Pokegears, this is a weird one in the sense that I love the idea of Pokegears, but when you play Pokegear and you don't have a supporter card in the top 7 cards of your deck, it really sucks. I'm very curious to see if they put out some other version of Pokegear, but for the time being, this one is going to be taking a break. Potentially the single biggest loss of this rotation is Quick Ball. Almost every deck runs for Quick Ball because how else do you get your basics down? You discard a card, grab the basic of your choice, put it into your hand. This is being replaced with Nest Ball, which is a card that I actually don't have in my collection. So let's go and pull up Nest Ball here. This is some relatively new news where Nest Ball from the Sun and Moon era is coming back. This is going to be the replacement for Quick Ball. It works a little differently though. This one is search your deck for a basic Pokemon and put it onto your bench, then shuffle your deck. You do not have to discard anything, which in certain ways is good. You don't have to get rid of a resource. In certain ways, it's bad. There are decks that want to use Quick Ball to discard things, such as a Regigigas trying to get rid of energy, or Mew thinning out the deck so they can use more Genesect's the draw ability. And you're going to be losing that with Nest Ball. The other side effect of this is that Nest Ball puts the Pokemon straight onto the bench. So if you want to play a Lumineon, you can't use Nest Ball for it. You're going to have to use an Ultra Ball, burn 2 resources, then get the Luminion in hand before you can put it down. So Quick Ball in that regard isn't going to be missed as much with Nest Ball, but there will be some unfortunate side effects with switching to Nest Ball instead. Rotom Phone was a really handy card in some decks, allowing you to look at the top 5 cards of your deck and put the card that you want on top. Pair this with Ornn Guru, or even just the Mew VMAX deck where you can then draw with Genesect, made this card incredibly powerful, and I'm really going to miss this one. Massive loss, Scoop Up Net, being able to pick up a Pokemon that isn't a Pokemon V or GX, put it back into your hand. This was a great way of moving Pokemon out of the active, resetting abilities, taking away damage. Lost Box used Scoop Up Net a lot. Regigigas used Scoop Up Net a lot. There are Shady Dealings used Scoop Up Net a lot. There are a ton of decks that use Scoop Up Net, and this one is going away. And I actually wouldn't be surprised if Scoop Up Net gets banned in Expanded, because it's only blocks scooping from Pokemon V or GX. This would be allowed to scoop up the new EX cards. So I wouldn't be surprised if we got a different type of Scoop Up Net that had a different rule, something like you can't scoop up Pokemon with a rule box, which would still allow you to get a similar ability, but then you couldn't scoop up Radiant Pokemon, which does kind of suck, but it does allow, it future-proofs the card so that you can use Scoop Up Net going forward. Team Yell Towel, this one's going away. You heal damage from both Pokemon. Something like Blissey or any of those quad decks like a Dracozolt would be playing this. This one's going away. Tool Scrapper is really handy, being able to get rid of 2 cards. However, most people who wanted to play a card like this are probably playing Lost Vacuum at this point, where you can take out 1 tool or a stadium instead. And for certain decks, just having that utility is more helpful than being able to take out 2 cards. Yellhorn confuses both Pokemon in the active. If you're playing this, odds are you have some sort of out to it like a Scoop Up Net or a Switch while leaving your opponent confused. This one's going away, and we haven't really seen an alternative to it. So we'll have to keep our eyes open for something like this. I'm sure there will be other cards that cause confusion, but no direct parallel for Yellhorn just yet. Galar Mine raises the retreat cost of Pokemon by 2, making it really hard for many Pokemon to escape. And with this rotating out, it's going to be easier for Pokemon to escape. And on top of that, there are certain archetypes that just go away. Leafeon VMAX becomes, I mean, it was already on hard times, but with Galar Mine going away, Leafeon VMAX basically becomes unplayable. Glimwood Tangle is a favorite for decks that rely on coin flips, being able to flip an extra time if you want. This is going away. I wouldn't be surprised if we get some sort of coin flip support, even though I don't like coin flips, playing coin flip anything. I think that it wouldn't be right to not have some sort of coin flip support, because they do keep making cards that use coin flips. Rose Tower was a stadium that used to be a staple in the Mew VMAX deck. At this point, you're playing more Lost City and Path to the Peak, but Rose Tower lets you draw up to 3 cards and just gave you a little extra draw power. This one's going away. Probably my favorite stadium in the game, Training Court, is going to be gone, and I really hope to see some sort of substitute to this or a reprint of this. I just feel like being able to get energy back from the discard pile helps so many different decks that I would love to see this again, pairing it with Radiant Greninja, or like really just getting energy back so that you don't have to fill your deck with even more energy, and which allows you to put in more text instead. Would love to see Training Court come back, but for the time being, looks like it's going away. Turffield Stadium was grass-specific support, allowing you to get an evolution Pokemon card from your deck. Pretty much every grass deck was running this, but like grass hasn't been particularly playable for some time now, so not too many decks are going to miss this one. Bird Keeper was not your regular draw 3 card. It allowed you to draw 3 cards while also switching your active with the bench. This did get a little bit of play here and there. I do like this card, but most decks don't really need this. You probably play Switch or Switch card instead. Maybe at most you play one of for Birdkeeper, but it is a notable card that is going away that did have some utility. Kabu was a favorite for decks, like quad decks that only played one Pokemon, kind of like your Stonjourners or your Drakazolts, where you could pretty comfortably rely on drawing 8 cards with Kabu. However, this one's going away, and to be fair, a lot of those quad decks aren't really playable right now anyway. A theme deck favorite, Leon, will be rotating out, and this one had special uses with the Royal Blaze Charizard, where it did more damage based on the number of Leons in the discard pile. However, there were a couple of decks that would run Leon as well, just to squeeze out that extra damage, something like a Palkia V-Star or an Ice Rider V-Max, just to squeeze out that extra damage to potentially get one-hit KOs on Vs and V-Maxes. This one will be going away. I wouldn't be surprised to see some sort of Leon-esque card show up at some point, but we'll just have to wait and see. An absolute heartbreaker for me, Marnie is a card that has defined the Sword and Shield era. And I know that the game has had other cards like this, like a Judge or an N, and this isn't even the best version of that style of card. However, being able to force both players to shuffle their hand to the bottom of their deck and then draw new cards is great disruption and has won many an event and tournament. And Marnie going away is kind of sad for me. This is one of the core trainers that I used to have in every deck when I first started playing the game. And it's not the biggest loss. Like, you can play stuff like Judge instead, which some people have done to get around the Oranguru. I wouldn't be surprised if we just saw people switch over to Judge, but maybe there's going to be a Marnie-esque card that is tuned a little bit that gives off the same sort of effect going forward in the Scarlet and Violet era. Some water decks are going to miss Nessa that allowed you to grab 4 cards that are like water Pokemon or water energy here and there. I never really played this card at all, but I have seen some decks use this to great effect, and you're unfortunately going to be losing this ability. Sonia is a card that appeared in a lot of theme decks and V-Battle decks, being able to grab either 2 basic energy or 2 Pokemon, basic Pokemon, and put them into your hand. Theme decks are ones that are going to miss this, although like Tord Reklev is literally the best Pokemon TCG player in the world, and he almost always has Sonia in his deck, so it's a little bit of a loss here. Air Balloon is a pretty big loss because there isn't really any other movement options. We have seen a stadium that lowers retreat costs of basic Pokemon by 1, but Air Balloon was great for being able to designate a Pokemon as a pivot or just to get something out in a jam. Air Balloon is actually a nerfed version of Floatstone, and this only reduced your retreat cost by 2. I wonder if the Pokemon Company felt like reducing your retreat by 2 was still too much because we haven't seen a Air Balloon reprint. I personally would love to see Air Balloon come back. I think it's good for the game, but we'll have to wait and see. Big Charm is a card that caught on from Brilliant Stars onward, especially in the world of Arceus and Arceus Duraludon. Being able to just squeeze out an extra 30 HP can be really helpful for certain decks so that you get past certain breakpoints. And yeah, this one's going away. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw some sort of alternatives to this, but at the time, this sort of general plus 30 HP is not coming back. A card that has been another late bloomer, Big Parasol, is great for shutting down effects of Pokemon's attacks like the Star Requiem on Giratina, the Eviltal Amazing Destruction, Sableye Lost Mine. You could block all that if the Pokemon in the active has Big Parasol. This is going away, and I am wondering what sort of substitution we have for Big Parasol. It feels like the effects of Pokemon's attacks, like Eviltal, is going away. But Giratina is not. Lost Box is probably going to be worse, But is there going to be some sort of solution or blocker for effects of Pokemon's attacks going forward? I think we have to see something at some point. At the time of this recording, we haven't yet. I need to stress this over and over again. But we'll see if we get some sort of alternative to Big Parasol, or will effects of attacks just go crazy? Really great defense for basic Pokemon, except Pokemon GX. It's funny, when they printed this card, GXs could not take advantage of this, but Pokemon V could, and you could raise Zacian V's HP up to 270 HP, and which a number of players did, and this gave you plus 50 HP on basic Pokemon. Really sad to see this one go. Cursed Shovel for mill decks. This was handy for Durant. You get hit and you force your opponent to mill through their deck as well. Memory Capsule is a card that didn't see a lot of play, but certain cards did use this a lot. The Jolteon to shut off water abilities, and then the brief moment in time where Gyarados VMAX was a thing, definitely used Memory Capsule to access Gyarados V's move, and it was pretty cool for the time. But I wouldn't be surprised if we see something like this come back at some point. Last but not least, for the trainer cards, Telescopic Sight is going away. This one let you do extra bench damage to Pokemon V and GX. We haven't really seen this card get used in quite some time, especially with Manaphy in the format blocking bench sniping anyway. But cards that use this a lot, I think Rapid Strike Urshifu in tandem with the Passimian could like one-hit KO Crobats on the bench. It was pretty awesome. We are running a bit long here, and so we'll do just a quick flag of special energies here. There's pretty much one special energy for each energy type, except Dragon type, unfortunately. We are also losing Capture Energy, which a number of decks were using to help set up, so we're going to be losing that consistency, at least in the immediate term. Twin Energy is going away, and there are a number of single prize decks that would love to have this. But I think the biggest loss here is Aurora Energy. Certain decks just kind of fall off a cliff without it, such as Regigigas, such as Lugia. Like Lugia just not having access to this pretty much hurts the deck to the point where I don't know if it's playable, at least in the immediate term. Like post-rotation, it's going to be a lot worse. And I see a mass exodus of Lugia players moving on to something else. But I think as more special energy is added back into the game, odds are we're going to see some sort of spread like this in the Scarlet and Violet era, where each type gets their own special energy. We could see Lugia make some sort of resurgence down the road. But for the time being, I think certain decks like Lugia, like Regigigas, get hurt the most by the loss of their special type of energy. Water's going to miss not being instant KO'd by Star Requiem. Speed Energy. Electric decks love Speed Energy to be able to draw extra cards. Hiding Energy. Dark decks lose that free pivot. Horror Energy likes putting on additional damage when they get hit. Powerful Energy is huge. Losing Powerful Energy for Lugia decks takes away the one-hit KO option from Lugia, and so on. No one was really using Heat Energy or Cooling Energy, but we're losing pretty much all relevant special energy from this set. I wouldn't be surprised if these get replaced in some shape or form, but for the time being, our special energy spread is going to be very different at the start of rotation. All right, that ends our quick look at the cards that are going away in rotation. We're definitely going to be talking a lot about rotation going forward, especially with looking at different deck archetypes and how can we make them work post-rotation. I know in particular for those who watch this channel, you're probably wondering, how do I make my League battle decks work? And we're gonna get to that. I think the next video I've got in my head right now is which League battle decks are still worth it post-rotation. I think one of those decks is pretty much safe, and the other decks have some question marks. So let's talk about those in a future video. But for the time being, I gotta get going. Thank you so much for watching. Some quick plugs before we go. You can find me on all the things: YouTube, Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram at In Third Person. You can check out my website. Well, check out me out on Twitch at In Third Person, where I stream the Pokemon trading card game every Sunday, 9 a.m. Eastern Time. And last but not least, oh, the button didn't work. Check out the website inthirdperson.com for more articles and videos on video games, board games, and other nerdy pursuits. Lots of rotation talk to come. Stay tuned for that. But in the meantime, I'm out of here. Bye-bye.